Hello everybody, Drywall Repairman here. We're going over a video on spray hoppers. I'm also going to show an example doing a spray knockdown. Basically, there's a lot of hoppers out there. I know I've seen people talk about using spray cans, these little spray cans they sell for like $10, $15. Only use those spray cans if you're in a time crunch, you're doing a small repair. Most repairs, you got to use a hopper. Spray hopper. You need an air compressor, a hose, and a spray hopper. There's several hoppers out there. Most main home improvement stores sell the hoppers. They range, I've seen, anywhere from $65 to $100. Those are good hoppers to use. They're kind of pricey. If you're just doing a small project, no one wants to fork out $75 for a hopper. But it is a nice tool. I've seen other places like Harbor Freights and stuff sell these other ones. Those ones work good too. The hopper I like to use called a Spray Mantis. It's a hard to find item. I just like the Spray Mantis because it's an old school hopper. It's simple to fix, easy, not a bunch of O-rings and stuff in there. You just got 2 O-rings to worry about, and that's about it. But basically, the most important thing with these hoppers are the tips. There's always 3 tips with most hoppers. I know there's other hoppers out there that have adjustable tips and stuff like that. I'm just talking about most common, what we use, what I use as a drywaller in the field every day. These 3 tips that come with, it's the large tip, medium tip, and a small tip. The most common tip that I always use is always the middle tip. The middle tip is pretty much used on most splatters and most knockdowns. Light, medium, knockdowns, splatters, medium, splatters. The big tip is used for popcorn sealing, acoustic textures, or heavy knockdowns. The smallest tip is used for orange peel. That you have to have thin mud sprayed at a high pressure that gives an orange peel, or light splatter. So we always use the middle tip on most jobs. I'd say 85% of my jobs with spray texture, it's always the middle tip. But basically on a patch like this, once you get your tips ready and you get your middle tip set in, if that's the one you're going to use, make sure your hoppers looks good. The trigger bounces back and forth. It's spring loaded. The spring, if it's good, it should pop back into place. If it doesn't pop back in place, your gun's going to stay open, shooting out material. So you want to be able to engage. On some textures, you're not pulling full throttle on that trigger, so you're just kind of, you got to make sure it bounces back into place, so that way the mud doesn't flow through when you're spraying. Basically, what I use is always use joint compounds. I thin out my joint compounds like a heavy pancake batter. That's the typical spray texture. If you're doing a heavier texture, of course, the mud's going to have to be a little heavier. If it's lighter, then of course it's going to be thinner. It's kind of like a Goldilocks, and it's really hard to explain. It's just doing it over and over, you learn. Sometimes if you're not comfortable with spraying, maybe you should spray on a piece of plastic or a piece of cardboard to test your spray pattern. Right when you turn on the air compressor at full pressure, it's not always best. Sometimes you want to just turn it on and let the air flow through the hopper a little bit to kind of drain some of the air out of the compressor, so you don't have full blast pressure all at once. That way when you start to spray your work area, you're going to do nice consistent pattern. You could either do a horizontal pattern, back and forth, or you can do vertical, up and down, up and down. Whatever pattern style you pick, just do nice and consistent spray. Nice and consistent. Take it easy, nice and consistent. Once you spray the whole area in that direction, then cross it off the other direction. On this one, I did a horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. Now I'm going to cross it off vertical, vertical, vertical. I'm going to also pay extra attention to angle areas, around the base area, around detail, and any hard to reach areas. And then I'm going to spray it out past my mud work so it blends into the existing texture. Basically get a nice spray pattern, nice and consistency. It looks nice. Right now, after you spray your area, if it's a nice splatter texture, perfect splatter, then it's good to go for a knockdown. Maybe you don't want to do a knockdown. A splatter texture is a nice texture. I prefer a splatter over a knockdown. If you're doing a new wall, new project, hey, go for a splatter. I like splatters. They look clean, perfect. They hide a lot of mistakes. It's a perfect texture. When you go to knockdown, the knockdown has to be more consistent and precise because you don't want to have flat spots here and there. So basically with these sprayed knockdowns, once you get your area sprayed out, I always knock it down with a 6-inch knife. I know a lot of guys out there, they use these special gimmicky knockdown blades. I've seen guys use windshield wipers. I've seen them use everything. You name it, it's been used or tried. If you're spraying a whole ceiling out, big, large project, of course you want to use a big knife. But small areas like this, just use a nice 6-inch knife. I don't mean an old rusted 6-inch knife. A nice straight edge 6-inch knife. We want a straight edge so it leaves a nice knockout pattern. Nice and clean. What I always do is I keep a damp sponge with me and a clean 6-inch knife, and I'm going to knock down the texture. Knocking down, I'm not pushing down hard on the knife. I'm just letting the 6-inch knife glide over my spray splatter. Just gliding over, not even pressing hard. Sometimes you're going to have to practice. Maybe you've never did a knockdown before, so go ahead and practice this procedure on a scrap piece of sheetrock, cardboard, piece of plastic, something, until you can get your technique down on your pressure. Sometimes these knives, working with knives, it's all about the pressure and how you use a knife. But we go ahead and we spray the area, then we turn around, knock it down nice and clean with a 6-inch knife. Same direction you sprayed it, go ahead and just knock it down, nice, consistent. I'm not pressing hard, it's just knocking it down. You're going to let your area dry, your knockdown dry for 24 hours, and then 24 hours or thereafter, I always recommend sanding knockdowns. Knockdowns need to be sanded with 150 to 220 grit sandpaper. Always lightly sand down the knockdown, and then you can primer and paint. If you do a splatter texture, you never sand splatter texture. Splatters are rounded. Knockdowns are flat top. So that if you go to sand your splatter, you're going to create a knockdown look. But this is a basic video on spray knockdown, stuff like this. You can tell just how I'm doing it. Just running the 6-inch knife. I'm just gliding over it. It's pretty simple.